It started as a grist mill until around 1900. It was a working grist mill. So this was the first major building in the village of Roslyn, was this grist mill, and the whole village was built around it. In 1790, George Washington visited the village of Hempstead Harbor at that time, and he stayed at the grist mill's owner's house, which is now Hendrick's. It was Hendrick Onderdunk, and we believe he saw the grist mill, because there's no other way. He came from Oyster Bay to come here, came up from Glen Cove, which was Mosquito Cove at that time, and he passed the grist mill, and it's written in his diary. He's mentioned that he was well entertained by Hendrick Onderdunk, who owned a grist mill and a paper mill. So it's pretty historic. It was passed on the Hicks family from Hicks Nursery. They owned it. And then in around 1916, they gave it to 5 trustees, including, to tie it in here, William Cullen Bryant's grandson was one of the trustees, Harold Goddard, and they wanted to restore it and keep it as a museum of industry. And they did that for like a year or two, and then realized nobody was coming to see it. So what did they do? They made it a tea house, and it became the Roslyn Mill Tea House. And from 1920 to 1976, it was an active tourist attraction in the village as a tea house. And people still come up to me and say, I remember coming to the tea house in the 70s. In 1976, for the bicentennial, Nassau County took it over with great intentions to restore it. And they did a lot of plans, never got enough money to do it. The one thing they did do is they stabilized the building, so it wouldn't collapse. But over time, they kept saying, we're going to restore it, we're going to restore it. Never got enough commitment. And so then Craig, as the president of the Landmark Society then, was really instrumental in getting a Roslyn Gristmill committee together and said, we got to save this building. We got to raise money for it. And it's going to go. Matter of fact, I was the town historian at that time, as well as, besides being part of the Roslyn Landmark Society. And people in the town said, oh, where is that grist mill? They didn't even know where. Oh, that shack is the grist mill? You know, it was like, it deteriorated so much. It looked absolutely terrible. So we started raising money. We got support from the Gary Charitable Trust, which, by the way, helped restore this building with the Landmark Society. And we raised money from New York State. We raised it from Landmark Society members as well. And we've raised $5.5 million for it. We need a couple of more million if anybody wants to chip in, but we're doing very well. We started restoring in about 2019. The building was below grade, if you recall. It was like 3 feet below grade. The tea house was 3. And people said, why did the grist mill sink? It didn't sink. The street got taller. They filled in the pond where the parking lot is across the street, and that's why it looked lower. We raised the building in 2020. We removed the concrete that was in the building, and we started restoring the timber frames, the columns on the outside. COVID hit. We got delayed like a year or so. In April, putting the restored columns, the columns themselves were restored in Vermont. We shipped them down. All the columns now have been restored, and we're putting it back together again. Half of them are back together again. So that's the story of the grist mill. It's been the major project, I'd say, for the Landmark Society for the last couple of years. And we're also doing the Mackay Estate Gate Lodge, which is on Roslyn Road and Harbor Hill Road. Has graffiti all over it. We're removing the graffiti in 2 weeks, so it's all exciting. So, and that ties in to the first building we saw, because it's also a Stanford White building. So you can see how the history of Roslyn is. There's all these connections.